What's up, everybody? Trey Biddy with Hog Sports coming to you from Ryan Silverfield's introductory ceremony here in the Walker Pavilion in Fayetteville. This is the indoor practice facility for those of you who don't know. So, a lot of Ryan Silverfield today. We had, obviously yesterday, we had National Signing Day. Today we had a press conference and then his introductory ceremony. I'll tell you what, it was kind of cool. Where I was sitting, I just kind of plopped down in the middle of everything, and then next thing I know, Dave Van Horn comes and sits right in front of me, and then John Calipari comes and sits right here, and then Ken Hatfield and his wife, Miss Cindy, sitting right behind me. And everything that somebody said, everything that Ryan Silverfield said up on the stage, Ken Hatfield's behind me going, yeah, here, go Hogs, everything that was said. And it's kind of interesting to think about because in my line of work, you get caught up so much on social media and the comment section and stuff, and to see all these people, all these diehard Razorback fans here that came out to see this, and I've been as frustrated with anybody, as anybody have with this football program, and rightly so. Everybody should be frustrated, but I'm ready, so ready to move forward, and I really hope things work out. I think Silverfield says all the right things and stuff. A lot of it's stuff that you're going to hear everywhere else, the coach speak type of stuff. We're going to do it the right way. We're going to work tirelessly. All those kinds of things that you hear. The proof is obviously going to be in the pudding. He's got to prove it. And as he told me the other day, he wishes he could go out and win a game tomorrow, but he can't. And there's a lot of hard work that has to be done filling out this coaching staff. That's the next step. Now that he's met with all the players individually and finished his first recruiting class, and I want to talk about some of those different things. I got to get out of this building though. I want to talk about, kind of everything that he's talked about, from roster building, what we want to see out of a coaching staff. But the most important stuff that came out of today, and I know I've been critical and everybody's been critical of Hunter Yurachek, but the most important thing that he said today was about finances and getting in the upper half of the SEC and spending in the budget for football, and that's going to boost your recruiting efforts. It's going to boost your efforts in the transfer portal, because NIL is included in all that stuff, revenue sharing as well, but also everything from getting people to work and to raise money for NIL. Everything from your travel budget to your recruiting budget to your assistant coach salaries to your support staff, advanced scouting departments, all of those types of things can be improved. And I've said this before, Houston Nutt used to always say that ball don't bounce straight up and down, and you can win games here and there, but you're never going to have sustained success, and I don't care who the coach is, if you don't have funding behind this project. We'll look at the Hog right here outside of Razorback Stadium. For those not familiar with the layout here, you got the Walker Pavilion, you got the Fred W. Smith Center, which is football operations, and you got the stadium right here. I'm actually parked over that way, but this is a walk and talk, so we're going to walk a little bit. The walk and talk is brought to you by Sutherlands. You can reach out to them at 1-800-66-BARNS or go to sutherlands.com and get a free estimate on a barn dominium, a hunting lodge, garage, barn. They got all that kind of stuff for you. Razorback fans have been following this search extremely deep also, just like you have. And a cool thing about them, they got a friends and family deal. So if you mention that you saw it on the walk and talk, you can get 15% back on any building that you spend. So say you spend $10,000 on a building, you get $1,500 back to spend on merchandise. So a pretty good deal. And I know you got a lot of options out there when it comes to home and gardens, but know that they are people who support the Razorbacks also. And they do have 4 locations in Arkansas, so check out our friends over at Sutherlands. So, a couple of things that he's talked about. And again, what Hunter Yurachek said about the fundraising efforts and getting Arkansas into the upper half, and it sounds like while they're not 100% where they want to be, everything is trending to getting that way. And I'd heard, from different people like, yeah, things aren't going that well, and I've heard from another person, things are going okay, and I heard from another person saying things are going really well. In terms of those efforts to get Arkansas where they need to be financially. And that's the most important thing. And getting a guy in Silverfield who is excited and anxious. I'll say this, one of the things that jumped out to me after the press conference, I'm trying to transcribe him. We had a 50-minute press conference or something today, and we're all working to transcribe, all the media people to transcribe what he said. And I'm just like, I'm used to transcribing Sam Pittman. And Pittman talks a little slower, thinks about what he's saying a little bit more. And Silverfield, sometimes his brain's working faster than his mouth, and you don't know where he's going, or where the sentence ends, and where it stops and stuff. It's been a challenge, actually. Like, it's not Jimbo Fisher, but it was actually a little bit of a challenge. And you always talk about how different, coaches are different. You go from, a coach that's an offensive-minded guy, and then the next guy you bring in is a defensive-minded guy. That kind of happens all around the country. One reason Florida fans were like, Summerall, we already had a guy from Louisiana, So you tend to go somebody a lot differently, and Ryan Silverfield definitely brings a lot of energy and excitement and enthusiasm. He's definitely, well, the motto's all in, and he seems to be that. So, and we'll see on winning games. I mean, obviously he's got a lot of work to do filling out this staff, and we'll see. I have not heard a whole lot, but just based on the way he was kind of saying things today about the continuity that they've had on offense and the success they've had on offense, it feels like they may just kind of continue things on from a coordinator standpoint from what they had at Memphis. And we'll see with the rest of the staff. It'll be real interesting to see. So, recruiting, he kind of talked about bringing in 25 to 30. I think he said different things. He might have said 20 to 30 high school recruits every year. Now, a lot depends on where we end up going with the 105-man roster. Is it 85 scholarships or is it 105? Right now in the SEC, it's 85. There is talks to go to 105. So let's just consider that it's 85 right now. I think it'll go to 105. But in the 85-man model, I personally think 30 high school recruits for the region that Arkansas is in is probably a little bit too much. Now, this year it's going to be different. They're going to have a lot of turnover. Hell, he had 70 new players on his roster, scholarship players and walk-ons, 70 new players on his roster at Memphis last year. So he had a lot of turnover there. But I would expect to see a lot of turnover with this roster also. I mean, you're just going to lose a lot of guys, and you're going to have guys, take other opportunities. You're going to have guys get processed. It's just kind of the nature of the beast these days. And you're going to have to fill a lot of spots. Plus, it's a small recruiting class overall, which he says it'll be the smallest recruiting class that he ever has here, but it's a small recruiting class, so you're definitely going to have to do some work in the transfer portal. And but moving forward, the model for Arkansas, and I've said this before, if you can get your finances right, which it seems like they're efforting towards that, seems like they're getting there. If you can get your finances right, it's a better model for Arkansas with the transfer portal, with NIL, than just relying on recruiting, because recruits tend to go nearby. They tend to go to schools nearby. And Arkansas just is not close. The radius of towns, within 150 miles, it's just, there's not a lot of big cities. And I've made the comparison to Auburn before when you talk about, you've got, Atlanta, of course, and Birmingham and Macon and Columbus. You've got a lot of big towns right there within 100 miles of Auburn. Arkansas, you have to reach further. So I think it's a better model, even though we get frustrated with NIL, even though we get frustrated with the transfer portal. It's a better model for Arkansas to have success if the money is there, if the backing is there. And you don't have to just go out and get, as he was kind of talking about today, you may get a third-team guy out of the transfer portal just because you need a third-team right tackle or something. But you can also get, redshirt freshmen like Shaq McCrory was, or sophomores like Kavian Brassard was. Like, you can get younger players through the transfer portal still and build your roster through guys like that too. Guys that have already been through the recruiting process, guys that understand that maybe I do want to get a little bit farther out for college. So I think it's a better model for Arkansas. I do think that Silverfield will be aggressive and will be obsessive. One of the questions that I asked him today, I think I asked him like 4 or 5 questions today, but one of the ones that I asked and I thought was the most important kind of is, what's weird about you? Because a lot of great coaches, they're just kind of weird. Think about, Eric Musselman, for example. Musselman just could not stand losing, and he was just energy and just very emotional. Mike Leach was just kind of very strange personality, saw the world very differently. Lane Kiffin, obviously, super big ego. Nick Saban eating the same thing for food, for lunch every single day, eating oatmeal cream pie every day. Everybody's got, like, you think about all these coaches, they've all got their, their weird things about them, their quirks. I thought one of the weird things was about how he's like, we got to change the lighting. I get that. I understand that. Like, we got to change the lighting. The Fred W. Smith Center, like you can see it right over here, this is a big complex. It doesn't look that big because a significant portion of it is underground. So you're like, you know, there's not a lot of windows and stuff. And it's a little dark in some of those meeting rooms. So they went and changed out all the light bulbs because they wanted it brighter in there. Makes a lot of sense. It's dark in there, you might kind of want to go to sleep a little bit. So maybe attention to detail, maybe that's something that we'll find out about him. I'd like that one. I would love some good attention to detail. No stone unturned. That would be nice. So we've hit on some philosophies with recruiting, and you know, I get how he's saying that and why he's saying it. You know, you want to make sure that, you know, high school recruits understand that they're important, and they are. Like, I'm not just saying like go out and just get all transfers. I'm not saying that at all. This year you're going to have to do a lot of that, but moving forward as you build the program, you want to have a good foundation with high school recruiting, and particularly not letting guys inside this state leave. Just go, like what has happened. And he does have a good relationship, I think, from what I've heard with high school recruits. I've also heard, you know, despite how we see, you know, the rah-rah attitude and stuff, maybe he's got a little bit of an edge to him. And maybe that's something we'll find out a little bit when we get out here. These are the outdoor practice fields, for those of you who don't know. I don't know if you know, you can see any of that, but you can see the upright right here probably. But these are two practice fields. One's grass, one is artificial surface. And then underneath this is the parking garage, which is where I'm parked. It used to be, you had the Fred W. Smith Center, or excuse me, you had the Walker Pavilion here, and then you had practice fields on the other side over there. And the practice fields were actually slanted. When Bobby Petrino was here, they quit practicing on the practice fields because they discovered that they were actually tilted. There's a slant to them. Very subtle. I mean, it's not that drastic, obviously. But so when they redid all this, they redesigned it, put the Fred W. Smith Center here. You got the weight room on that side, the indoor practice fields, the outdoor practice fields, and then there's parking under here. And this is, of course, the hyper. When I was here, there's 3 courts. Well, there's 4 courts in there, but there's 3 courts next to each other, and all the good players play on this side. I don't know if that's changed, maybe. This is the side where like Jason Peters would play on, dominating in the hyper. So, yeah, I mean, I think Silverfield said the right things today. And, you know, again, like, I'm going down here, but once I go down there, it's over because it's going to get echoey. Said the right things today, but we're not going to know what kind of coach Arkansas has, aside from, you know, he's got a resume. And I've seen people say stuff like this is Chad Morris 2.0 and stuff. I mean, Chad Morris like had a losing record at SMU. I don't think it's fair to compare anybody to the worst coach that we've ever had in this conference. But he is very different than Sam Pittman. I'm anxious to see what kind of staff he puts together. I'm anxious to see what the reflection is when we talk about the money given to football and how that's applied with these assistant coaches. The only thing we'll be able to see, you know, the assistant coach salaries. So we'll see what that pool looks like, but that's about the only measure that we'll have from, you know, any official capacity on what they're actually spending for football. Time to move forward. I think we've all been pissed off long enough. I know I have. Lord knows I have. People are like, Trey, you're so bitter now. But I mean, it's also just like, you know, a 12-minute reaction. I'm not always like that, just some of the time. I'm an emotional person, I guess. Highs and lows, the roller coaster of college football. All right, everybody, that's it. Hog Sports is 75% off. Check out our people at Sutherlands, Sutherlands.com, 1-800-66-BARNS, barn dominiums, hunting lodges, garages, barns. They got all that stuff for you. And here's the parking garage. All right, everybody, that's it. This has been Trey Biddy with hogsports.com. Ryan Silverfield ceremony is over. We'll catch you next time.